It's the purpose of science is to improve the knowledge, to find out what is wrong with current thinking and correct it and move forward and improve knowledge. And so this is totally anti-science, what is being done. And worse, it's being done at taxpayer expense. Mm-hmm. I'm a taxpayer and I'm supporting this nonsense.
Yeah.
But the real tragedy is that the scientists themselves have been used to advance an agenda that is an inhumane agenda. Yeah. And that is, in my view, wholly unacceptable.
I concur totally. Yes. And as I said, I recognize it. And since in two different disciplines, it's the same truth, it must be the truth, what you're saying.
And it's probably also true well, I know it's true in astrophysics because I've published a few papers relating to astrophysics, such as the thermonuclear ignition of stars and why the galaxies have the shapes that they have. And the astrophysics community tried to bury those.
Again, yeah.
This is absurd. But it's what people study the atmosphere. There are a lot of scientists that make measurements, take samples of the atmosphere, study it, but they simply do not acknowledge what is going on right before our eyes. You don't even have to go outside. You turn on the television to a program over the last few years, and you'll see in the background the trails that the jets are laying in the sky. And there's something incredibly dishonest about these people. So when it started happening where I live on a near daily basis, that's when I decided I would apply my science background and my understanding of how to make discoveries to figure out what it is that they are spraying. And what it is that they are spraying is horrible.
It is, yes. Here in the Netherlands, where I live, the first thing I see in the morning when I open a curtain above my stairs, I see a large part of the sky, and most days it's already with stripes. And the stripes are being sort of advertised everywhere, because if you look at a Volkswagen advertisement,
I've seen that.
It has stripes. They are changing a bridge here, building a bigger one. And there was an artist impression of the new situation, complete with exactly
of course.
Air stripes. It's impossible. And I wrote a letter about that to the government, and I never got an answer, of course.
Well, here's the thing that, well, let me jump ahead and tell your audience just what it is that they are spraying.
Yes, please.
There's very good scientific evidence from several lines of investigations that what they're spraying is something called coal fly ash. When coal is burned, say in utilities that produce electricity, the heavy ash settles and the very fine ash goes up the smokestack. Except in Western countries, now it's required to be trapped electrostatically because it's toxic. It's a toxic nightmare. But this is the stuff that they're spraying. And it doesn't stay in the air. Where they're spraying is in the lower atmosphere, in the troposphere, which is convective. In other words, it turns over and over and over. So those particles that are still suspended, you breathe them. That's inevitable. The fine ones, you don't even have to breathe them. They can go through your eyes, through your skin. This is terrible stuff.
Because you can say that it's nanoparticles?
Nanoparticles, yes. And when the stuff lands on the ground, it's dark gray color, and it absorbs sunlight, and so it adds to global warming. That's not all it does. When it's sprayed into the air where clouds form, which is where they spray it, it retards the fall of rain. The pollutant matter just blocks the little droplets of water from coalescing and getting big enough, heavy enough to fall to earth. That's one thing. Then what it also does is it heats the atmosphere. It still another thing, like clouds, it blocks heat leaving the earth. So these are all things that cause global warming, which then brings up the question, why would so many governments just, somebody must have told all of the governments something, the government leaders, and they believed it without question. Because if they had told them the truth and told them about the toxic nature of coal fly ash, I mean, only an insane person would have agreed to allow that. I sometimes wonder what is being told. My guess is, and I don't know this, but I guess that what governments are being told, and this may come through some of the UN documents, that the earth is warming due to fossil fuel, and we have to do something about it. We have to prevent global warming. But humans, people, are too ignorant to deal with it, so we'll do it privately and quietly. Well, this is the biggest scam in the world, because what they're doing is causing global warming, and they're blaming it on the CO2 that you and I breathe out, and the fossil fuel. And so the more they act to prevent global warming by spraying, the more it heats up the earth. It causes disasters. I mean, the clouds can, when they they can't rain naturally because of all the pollution matter, but eventually they become so saturated they have to, and then you get downpours and you get storms. I mean, this is an assault on planet Earth and all of its inhabitants.
Yes. What I heard people say, and not ignorant people, I must say, is that when Fukushima happened, they made a barrier so that the rain could not fall on California, because then the whole radiation of Fukushima would have dumped on California.
Well, the problem with that logic is that they're spraying everywhere, not just in California. They're spraying us like bugs here in California, but they're spraying throughout the U.S., especially in Florida, and they're spraying all over Europe, and in both Eastern Europe and Western Europe. They're spraying in Australia. I think they're also spraying in Russia. I've actually seen. I was in India in November, and the smog cleared up enough one day that I could see the trails being laid in India.
Oh, wow.
This is terrible, because India lives in a state of a very, very fragile existence with nature. I mean, you know, the floods in Bangladesh that kill thousands of people. I mean, this is under normal conditions. The last thing that the people in India need is to have somebody messing with global climate. This is terrible.
Yeah, it's awful. And also things like drought that has been happening to California. so that they had to take out many almond orchards.
Oh, yes.
It's a disaster. It's really awful.
Well, I keep wondering, why would somebody do that? And there are certain things, possibility. I'm sure there are a lot of agendas. One agenda is there are people that stand to make vast fortunes, including the people who are involved in the spraying.
Yes.
But there are people that hate freedom, that hate America because we have freedom. And they probably hate the Europeans as well because you're getting sprayed.
Yeah.
There's the idea that they want to create such havoc, blame it on human fossil fuel use, that the UN will be empowered to start controlling everything. And that's probably the number one agenda. A secondary agenda is that melting the Arctic and the Antarctic to get at oil and the natural resources that are there.
Yes, yeah. And population reduction, I would say.
There are people who would like to do that.
Yeah, definitely.
We live in a time of monsters, but what we've lost as a people, we've lost our sense of humanity, or many of us have. I don't think you have. I certainly wouldn't admit to that. But many people, they just are oblivious to what is happening. And part of it is because they are being deceived in this country, certainly by the CIA, by the news media.
Yeah.
They're
news media.
Well, which is probably pretty much run by a few people, and probably there's somebody from the CIA in each one of the major outlets. I've heard rumors to that effect. Mm-hmm. Irrespective, I mean, this is an inhumanity. That there's never been anything of the scale of this on our planet. I mean, this is worse than war, because it's a war on everybody.
Yes, that's what it is. And there are still so many people who are ignorant of what is happening, because I always ask people, did you see these trails in the sky? Huh? Trails? What? And then they have no clue. And even when I gave my presentation in this hearing of the EU Parliament in Brussels in 2013, there was a member of the European Parliament who had no clue about these trails. And he was really, when I said, yes, and it concerns your grandchildren also. And then he woke up, sort of. I could hear the coin drop.
Well, the thing that, going back to the scientific community has ignored this. They even the people that study the atmosphere, they don't mention the spraying. Some of them talk about geoengineering as if it's some future thing that we might have to do. Yeah. And now a lot of meetings around the world with the idea of providing a basis for governance for a time when we might have to prevent global warming by geoengineering the stratosphere way up high. But that's all a sham. That's all a sham. What they'd like to do is to make legal what is absolutely illegal and horrific that is going on right now.